Hello and welcome to the podcast. I am your host. My name is Neil Gorman, and what you are listening to right now is a podcast that up until today has operated under the name The Informed Podcast. The mission of the podcast has been to have informal, but hopefully informative conversations about psychoanalysis. And as I've engaged in this project over the years that I've been doing it, I have had lots and lots of informal, hopefully informative conversations about psychoanalysis. But I haven't done an episode of this podcast in quite some time. And part of the reason that I haven't done one in quite some time is because I have started to become a little bit uncomfortable with the format of the podcast. And what I mean by that is that this podcast and the format that I was using, the name that I was using, the assumptions that I was making when I was making it, these were things that definitely fit me and fit me pretty well, I think, for a pretty long time. But over the years that I've been creating it, a lot has changed. I have changed. The way that I think about psychoanalysis has changed. My relationship to psychoanalytic theory has changed. My relationship to psychoanalysis as a practice has changed. My relationship to psychoanalysis as an analysand, as somebody who goes and presents themselves to a psychoanalyst and talks to them, that has changed. My relationship to psychoanalytic institutions has changed. At this point in time, I am a member of the Lacanian Compass. I'm a member of the New Lacanian School and the World Association of Psychoanalysis. I was not always those things. That's something that has happened to me as a result of the work that I've done within the psychoanalytic community. So a lot is different today than it was many years back when I started doing this podcast. And so what I was finding is I would sometimes start to think about doing this podcast. I'd think I should do an informed podcast. What do I want to do a podcast about? And I'd think about that and I'd start to plan it. And it was like putting on some clothes that used to fit you really well and used to be a style that you were kind of into. But at this stage of your life, you put those clothes on and they don't fit the same way. They don't fit in a way that kind of works for you anymore. And the style, that seems off too. It's not quite your style at this point, right? It's different. Your style has changed. And if you put those clothes on, you realize that you're wearing something that reflects some of your preferences from before, not necessarily your preferences now. And that's what's been going on with me. I've been feeling that with this podcast. And so over the past several months, I decided that I was going to seriously consider what I wanted to do this podcast. Did I just want to end it and say, okay, it's been a good run for a couple of years, let's hang it up? I thought that might be what I would do. But that didn't seem right. At times it seemed like maybe it would be the right thing to do. And then whenever I would start to move towards that, something in me would say, nah, this isn't quite right. This doesn't feel like the thing that I want to be doing here. So I heeded that. And I kept thinking about this. I kept thinking, what do I want to do here? And what I decided I wanted to do was rebrand, relaunch the podcast. I want to give it a new name. I want to give it a new feel. And so I am renaming the podcast. From this point forward, the podcast that you're listening to will no longer be called The Informed Podcast. It's going to be called Speaking Body. It's also going to be, Speaking Body is going to not just be a podcast. It's also going to be a website. If you go to speakingbody.com, you'll see where that website is at today. That website is going to be a repository, an archive of the things that I write about psychoanalysis. It's also going to be a place where you can sign up for a newsletter if that's something you want to do, that will keep you informed about all of the different things that are happening in my world, the different things that I'm doing. It's also going to sometimes be a video series. I have been making podcasts for a long time. Making an audio-only podcast is something that I think I've gotten somewhat good at, and it's not hard for me to do. It doesn't take a lot of time and energy, but it seems to me that a lot of podcasters have made at least a partial transition, sometimes a full transition from audio only to audio and video. And I think I'm going to be trying to do my own version of that. So I'm going to be taking what was the Informed Podcast and is now the Speaking Body Podcast, and I am going to be making it into audio-only podcasts still, but I'm occasionally going to turn it into a video as well. Those videos will be up on YouTube for anybody who happens to be interested in that. Let's talk a little bit about the content and what you can expect if you continue listening to this podcast in the future. By the way, if you're listening to it now, the RSS feed that you use to subscribe to this podcast through Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever, that's not changing. It's the same. You don't need to change anything. But here's what you can expect content-wise going forward. Speaking Body is going to be a podcast that tries to take a look at the practice of psychoanalysis. And when I say practice, what I mean is the way that the theory is actually put into doing things and stuff. There's a lot of different people out there right now who are writing stuff and making videos and podcasts about psychoanalytic theory and taking that theory and applying it to interesting things like film and literature and philosophy. And I listen to those podcasts. I watch those videos. I find them pretty interesting and often very useful. But that's not what I want to do. I will inevitably have to talk about psychoanalytic theory. That's a big part of what comprises psychoanalysis. But what I want to have be my primary focus is the ways in which psychoanalytic theory, psychoanalytic ideas, psychoanalytic concepts end up affecting the way that people actually live their lives, the ways in which psychoanalysis can turn into a set of practices, a set of things that people do. And in doing them, experience changes. Sometimes changes that are nice, that they enjoy, sometimes changes that are difficult, but still ultimately offer something of value. This is where I want to focus my attention. As I do that, I'm going to talk about psychoanalysis from a couple of different angles. The first angle that I will talk about it from is a clinical angle. I will talk about the clinical practice of psychoanalysis as somebody who does practice it clinically. I am in my office right now as I record this. This is where I see patients in Analysands. I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what it means to practice psychoanalysis clinically. Sometimes that will be talking about some very practical nuts and bolts sorts of things. Other times we'll be talking about more theoretical kinds of things. We'll kind of see where that goes. I don't want to stop there. I also want to talk about psychoanalysis as a clinical practice that people experience as an analysand, because, in case this wasn't already obvious, every single practicing psychoanalyst out there today couldn't be a practicing psychoanalyst unless they were first in Analysand, unless they had an experience of psychoanalysis as an analysand. That is the thing. That experience is the thing that is essential if somebody wants to practice as a psychoanalyst. You can't skip it. It doesn't work. Now, there might be people out there who call themselves psychoanalysts who never had that experience. Okay. My, I guess, point of view would be that those people are calling themselves psychoanalysts, but if they don't have the experience of being an analysand, I don't buy it. So I really want to focus a lot on that experience as well, the experience of being an analysand, of being somebody who practices psychoanalysis by showing up regularly to psychoanalytic sessions, when it's easy, when it's hard, when it's interesting and exciting, and when it's boring, because sometimes it is. But you continue with the practice anyways, because you know that there's something of value in it. That's something that I want to take a look at. And then the third area that I want to take a look at is the ways in which psychoanalytic practices, the practices of being a psychoanalyst, the practices of being an analysand, the ways in which those practices leave the consulting room, leave the office, or if you see patients through Zoom, leave the Zoom session and go out into the world. Because I know that my experience as an analysand, my experience as a psychoanalyst have been so significant. And those experiences that I had in an office, in a psychoanalytic session, they didn't just stay there. It's not like I had the experience in that session and then that was it. And I left and went back to doing all the same things that I was doing before I had that experience. Usually what ended up happening is I would have a session, things and stuff would happen in the session. And as a result of those things and stuff happening, I would leave the session. And the way that I did stuff in my life as a subject, as a speaking body out in the world, that changed. And that's something that I think is really important as well. The ways in which psychoanalysis affects us, affects our subjectivity, and the ways in which those effects are lived in our day-to-day lives. This is something that I want to talk about. Now, as I talk about all of these things, There's going to be times where I am inevitably going to be somewhat reliant on a very specialized set of vocabulary terms, which is the Lacanian parlance, right? The terms like jouissance, discourse of the master, object A, castration, unconscious, etc., right? These are very psychoanalytic terms that have sometimes many different meanings. And there's terms that people say in normal everyday talk as well that take on a different meaning if people say them within the Lacanian language. Words like imaginary, symbolic, and real, for example. Words like drive, those have everyday kind of commonplace uses, but they also have very specific, not necessarily super commonplace usages within the Lacanian community, within the Lacanian language. And at times I'm going to need to use that language. However, one of the goals that I've set for myself in this podcast is that whenever I do end up using that rather specialized set of vocabulary to say something, I'm going to do my best. I don't know how successful I will always be, but I will do my best to then follow that up and try to make the same kind of statement, but do it in as much of a normal way as I can. Use as much normal words, not saying it with lots of jargon, but in a very commonplace way. That's not always going to be easy, I know, but I'm going to do my best to nail that. So that's one of the things you can expect here. So that's it. This has been my announcement. I'm changing the podcast. It's going to be something different now. It's going to be something new. I hope that you're interested in the form it's going to take, because I'm interested in making it in this new form. If you're somebody who's listened to this podcast for a long time, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to it. I really genuinely appreciate that you've done that. It means a lot to me. If you are somebody who is new to this podcast, this is your first episode, welcome. I hope that you'll stick around for a long time. And that is that.